You and I were taught to respect men, respect our elders, respect our teachers, respect our parents, completely void of this concept of self-respect, completely void of the concept of everything that it means to love yourself. I mean, some of us, well, I know I was raised with the belief that loving myself was a bad thing, like it was evil to love myself, because we have this misperception that ego is the same as loving yourself, and they're two very different things.
Right.
They're actually complete opposites. Ego is based in fear and the perception that the perceptions of other people, how we're going to be perceived by other people. It's actually fear-based. Self-love is genuinely loving ourselves no matter what.
Self-love then equates to self-respect.
Yes. So when we love ourselves, we honor ourselves, we respect ourselves, we forgive ourselves, we cherish ourselves. And in that, we learn how to protect ourselves when we need protection. And all of that stems from self-love. And it's not something that's being taught. Love yourself first. We can't give what we don't have. And yet, so many of us were taught completely the opposite, that it's not okay to think highly of yourself. It's not okay to love yourself. And that's what we need more than anything, is to start when we're really small and knowing that it really is okay to love everything about you. And it doesn't mean that you're better than anybody else. It just means I am perfectly okay with who I am.
Wow, what a different concept that is from what we were raised with.
Yeah.
To love ourselves was evil and selfish and egotistical and bad and wicked. To even like yourself.
To even like yourself. I loathed myself. I hated myself so much I tried to kill myself.
Well, that's sort of a tradition, wasn't it?
Yeah. I fantasized about it for about 2 years. Didn't even have the guts to do that. I really, that was another one I beat myself up over, that I didn't even have the guts to kill myself.
Well, we're sure glad that you didn't, because the concept of punishing and degrading a child to that extreme, punishment and degrading and condemning a person has no value whatsoever except one of control and maliciousness. It has no other value.
Right.
So it's a logical thing, if people really knew, that to degrade and to devalue a human being really degrades and devalues them, because it says more about them than anything else.
Yeah. And what's really interesting is that as long as we degrade and devalue other people, it's part of it continues that pervasive belief that some people are worth less and worth more, and we'll always have that dichotomy of lower class, poor people, and the rich class, because there is that belief that some people need to be degraded. And when you're raised in an environment in a childhood where you're constantly bombarded with degradation, your ability as an adult to rise up out of that is much more difficult. It's possible. You and I have proven that it's possible.
Yes, it is possible.
It's a lot harder than if you had parents who were supportive.
Right.
You know, it is possible. It's a little more work. It's a little more challenging. And you and I are here to teach other people that you can. It doesn't matter what your story looks like. You can rise above it and create a life you absolutely love.
Sometimes in the depth of the most rotten story comes the greatest incentive and inspiration to get out of it.
Yeah, so it's so funny. People would say to me, oh, that you were so courageous to leave as a teenager. That took so much courage. And I would laugh and say, no, I was just desperate. But I had this great insight a couple of years ago that sometimes that's what courage looks like.
Yeah. A lot of people say that if you're afraid, you can't be courageous. I object. I think that courage means you're going to go, fear and all, no matter what. You're going despite it all.
Yeah, very much so. A lot of times courage comes out of desperation, that you are so desperate to make a change in the world, whether it's your personal world or the world as a whole, that you will do whatever it takes. That's what courage is. Courage is actually based in love, not fear.
Yes.
So fear would keep you stuck in that place. And courage says, not anymore. I refuse to be afraid anymore. And it pushes through that barrier.
That's
I am
amazing.
worth more than this.
So anybody listening out there, realize that courage is in you. Fear and all, but the courage is there.
Actually, we were born with it.
You
We
know-
were born with it. We wouldn't walk. We wouldn't talk if we didn't have courage.
That's right.
We're born with it. It's in there. It's in every one of us. It's what allows us to break through those barriers. If we didn't have courage, we would have never gotten up and walked. We would have never crawled. We would have never spoken our first word and tried to be understood. And it's there, just waiting for us to say, okay, I'm ready for another breakthrough. I am done with my life being like this. I deserve more than this. I am worth more than this suffering.
So basically, what happens to the human being when they start forfeiting who they are from the time they're very young, and they don't even know they're forfeiting, and they become less and less and less of who they are, and that's what the problem is, because they soon lose track. They only believe the negative compound fractures heaped upon them. They have nothing to do with reality.
Right.
And to get back to who they are takes courage. But if they can really see that, they'll stop forfeiting their hopes, their dreams, their future, their talent, their ability to please someone that has no respect for them anyway.
Right.
Because somebody that would do that to you has no respect for you.
No, and ultimately, they don't have any respect for themselves.
Of course, of course. But
because if someone had a self-loving relationship, they would never take that out on someone else.
True. It starts with them,
Yeah.
and it rolls over on everybody else.
Yeah.
But the victim is the child.
Right. Yeah, and what's really sad about that is that also the perpetrator is in their own suffering, in their own way. They also are a victim of their own suffering, and they're projecting that onto the child because they have no idea how to heal their own suffering.
So then there's another concept. One cannot destroy, demean, and be cruel to someone without really hurting themselves, can they? It's impossible.
It's impossible.
So every time they project out that negative spewing, they're taking themselves down a little bit lower. And it's visible for the outsider to see that, because the one with all that negativity, it is more about them. They see them as who they are.
Yeah.
It's the innocent person that doesn't understand that internalizes that invokes our compassion.
Right. Right. The word compassion actually means with suffering.
With suffering.
Yeah. So when we see someone who's suffering and we feel for them, that's compassion.
Yeah.
It's one of the most powerful forces that we have on the planet. Compassion is the energy literally that heals all things.
So when you see some innocent soul, child, internalizing the negativity that doesn't belong to them.
I just want to pick them up and hug them.
Yes, because...
Don't believe this people are telling you. It's their stuff. I just wish I could tell these kids don't... You know, one of the questions people ask me is, if you could go back to high school, what would you tell yourself? And I would say, don't believe their crap. Don't buy into their crap. It's their stuff.
Right.
That's not who you are.
Because children at high school, boy, you run into the gamut of all the extremes.
Yeah.
You're all thrown together and nobody's really supervising all of it.
And everybody's walking around trying to impress everybody else because they don't understand that they can own their own stuff and that they don't have to impress other people.
Well, it isn't you. They're trying to prove it to themselves, and that's where the silly circle starts.
So little games that we play inside our head.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Because if they were convinced they had value, they wouldn't be trying to throw it onto everybody else to convince them. They've got the problem of the conviction.
Right. So you see some kids at school who are so perfectly okay with who they are. They're so amazingly supportive of other kids. I see them. Now, my daughter's in middle school, and I know a couple of kids, since I've been watching them through elementary school. I know their parents. These kids are amazing. They are so supportive of all of their schoolmates. And these are kids that are so well balanced and so good with who they are. They have nothing bad to say about anybody else.
That's so great, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so great when you see kids like that. That's a great start, because there's so many kids that are just wounded. They're little wounded warriors coming to school.
Yeah.
And that's heartbreaking.
And it starts at home.
Yes.
Yeah. And I, you know, my kids, even when they were really little, you know, first and second grade, they would say, "This one kid is so mean to me." And I've taught them compassion. If there are kids at school who are bullying you, it's because somebody at home is bullying them.
They do what they see.
Yeah. And that's the only the only place they have any power, because they don't have any at home, is to take it out on other kids at school.
So they live what they learn.
Yeah.
Literally.
And that's how we see people who hurt us through the eyes of compassion understand that they hurt us in their own suffering.
That's very sad.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot to do to reach more people.
We do.
We have a lot to do. So when people are out there being negative and impossible and cruel, they really need to look inside and ask themselves where it all started with them.
Right.
What voices were in their head? Who put them down? And it is the only way that they can feel good and get it out to hurt someone else? I don't think so. What is it they really want?
What they really want is to feel that they are worth something. Every person on this planet wants to be validated. Ultimately, that's what we all want. We want to know that we are of value.
Being validated and accepted is a basic human need.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
Yeah.
So those that are going around making life miserable for somebody else have a real problem.
Yeah, they really just want somebody to notice them.
That's a hard way to get attention, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And so we have a lot of people who are really taking their own suffering and projecting it onto other people because they desperately want to be noticed. And a lot of them end up in leadership positions and bossing other people around because they need to be validated, not understanding that validation comes from inside of ourselves. We have to work down through all of those layers. I mean, you know, for me, really getting to this point where I feel really, really good about who I am and about my life. I could say I love my life. And it has nothing to do with my circumstances. I learned how to love my life in the middle of a bankruptcy, a foreclosure, a marriage that was falling apart, 2 kids diagnosed with learning disorders. My life was falling apart. And that's when I learned how to love my life, in the midst of all of that chaos. Because I found it in peeling down all of these layers of false beliefs to get to my own truth. And when I started living my life based on my truth, not on anybody else's expectations, I fell in love with myself.
And that's beautiful, because you are a beautiful person and you heal people with what you teach.
Thank you.
Your healing is healing others, which is why I wanted the honor of having you here today.
Thank you.
Yes. It's a very wonderful, wonderful thing you do.
Thanks.
Thank you for it. I want to thank you so much for being here, because truly, truly, Victoria, I think that what you teach is so valuable. It needs to be heard, and I hope that you will continue for a long time. And I hope that the lives that you touch will periodically write you a letter and tell you how it went. Okay?
Oh, I love fan letters. I don't call them fan letters, but I had someone about a week ago who was visiting from New York. He called me up and he said, "My mom is in town and she's a big fan of yours. Can she meet you?" So I thought it was really sweet. He and his mom took me out to breakfast, and it isn't about fans. This isn't about fame and fortune for me. It's knowing that I'm making a difference in people's lives.
Well,
and that for me is living my life on purpose.
You truly are. And it's wonderful and an honor to me for this show that you drove clear from Los Angeles to honor us with your presence. Deeply appreciated. Everybody, you got something special here today.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.